Russian President Vladimir Putin launched his summer offensive with bold promises: more troops, more firepower, and a decisive push to break Ukrainian defenses. But that offensive is now stalling. Across multiple fronts, Ukraine's kill zones are systematically dismantling Russia's assault. Entire columns are being caught in pre-planned traps, mined roads, precision artillery strikes, and relentless drone attacks, leaving burned-out tanks and destroyed vehicles scattered across the battlefield. What was meant to be a show of strength is rapidly turning into one of the most costly military blunders of the war. From Belgorod to Pokrovsk to Kharkiv, Russian forces are walking into the same deadly traps again. So how is Ukraine pulling this off? And why is Russia struggling to adapt? Let's take a closer look at how Ukraine's kill zones are crushing Putin's summer offensive. According to The Lowdown, Russia is currently focusing its summer offensive on 3 key areas. Pokrovsk is still Putin's main focus. The small city has become Ukraine's main stronghold in Donetsk, because it's a logistical hub that allows Ukraine to provide vital military equipment to its troops operating on the eastern front. Putin wants Pokrovsk. He wants it to take away that hub, and he needs it to carve a pathway through to the Donetsk administrative border. Reaching that border means he essentially takes Donetsk, something he's been trying to do since he started his ill-fated full-scale invasion. Beyond Pokrovsk, Putin is also hoping that his summer offensive will help him to take Kharkiv and protect Belgorod. The latter is a Russian border oblast that Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has confirmed that Ukraine is attacking. Putin doesn't want that. He doesn't need another Kursk on his hands so soon after Russia reclaimed that territory. As for Kharkiv, Putin wants that city not because it's one of Ukraine's central hubs, but because it's evolved into the symbol of Ukraine's resilience against Russia. Putin tried to take Kharkiv before. He failed. Now he wants the city because taking it would damage Ukraine's morale. Putin keeps ordering assaults on these regions. All that's happening is that his forces are getting funneled into Ukraine's kill zones and decimated. We take you first to Belgorod. Either on or just before May 15th, Ukraine's 92nd Assault Brigade's drones discovered a large Russian force was moving around the outskirts of the small settlement of Zaravilovka. Not only is that settlement nestled in Belgorod, which we've already established is being targeted by Ukrainian raids, but it also lies just opposite the border Russia shares with Ukraine's Kharkiv Oblast. The 92nd Assault Brigade reported Russia's movements on social media. The enemy, using armored vehicles and a significant number of personnel on motorcycles and all-terrain vehicles, decided to stage yet another meat assault, the brigade said. It was an assault that would inevitably end in failure. Rather than fighting against Russia's mechanized units directly, Ukraine's clever troops funneled Russia's vehicles into a pre-planned kill zone, where they were blown up by mines, hit by artillery, and hotly burned by drones of various types, says the 92nd Assault Brigade. Russia's losses were catastrophic. By the end of Putin's failed offensive, around 10 of his BMP fighting vehicles and tanks were nothing but burned-out husks on the Ukrainian battlefield. Don't underestimate how massive this loss is. Euromaidan Press says that they add to the more than 17,000 armored vehicles and pieces of heavy equipment Russia has already lost in Ukraine so far. As more of Russia's armored units get obliterated, Putin is finding himself having to send his soldiers to attack Ukraine's defenses in regular civilian cars and even on motorcycles. Interestingly, this assault near Belgorod may have been a continuation of an earlier assault reported by Ukraine's 58th Motorized Brigade. That means Ukraine's forces succeeded in sending Russian troops into its Belgorod kill zone twice in quick succession. The 58th Motorized Brigade intercepted a Russian attack near Belgorod just days before the 92nd Assault Brigade did the same. In the case of the earlier interception, Ukraine managed to cause massive Russian losses. Putin's forces sacrificed a tank, 2 of its motorcycles, a pair of all-terrain vehicles, 1 civilian car, and a staggering 8 infantry fighting vehicles to this assault. Like the 92nd Assault Brigade, the 58th Motorized Brigade was quick to release a statement on Russia's failure. Leaving a pile of burned scrap metal in the fields, the invaders rolled back to lick their wounds. Of course, except for those who became victims of the adventurism of their own command. The message from Ukraine is clear. Putin is getting too ambitious at a time when he doesn't have the troops available to make those ambitions a reality. That makes his forces easy pickings for Ukraine. In Belgorod and near Kharkiv, Ukraine used drones to track the movements of Russia's slow mechanized assaults. Ukraine watches and waits, often using drone assaults to direct Russia's incoming vehicles into specific areas of the battlefield. That's when Ukraine strikes. All of that misdirection sends Russia's vehicles into territory that Ukraine has covered in mines and targeted with its artillery. Explosive firepower rains from above as detonations occur on the ground, destroying everything that Russia sends Ukraine's way. That's the key to a kill zone, and Putin keeps on falling for the same plan. So why does Russia keep pushing? According to the Lowdown, Putin's goal is for his forces to advance to the point where they reach the border of the Dnipro region. There are two reasons he wants to hit that border. Militarily, Dnipro allows Russia to create a pincer in Ukraine's east, forcing Ukraine to stretch its forces further across an enlarged front line. That stretch would result in Ukraine pulling soldiers away from Donetsk and Pokrovsk, Putin hopes, which opens up gaps for his assaults to start working in those regions. Beyond that, reaching the Dnipro border also amounts to an information victory for Putin. He causes a massive blow to Ukraine's morale while securing part of his enemy's logistics network. Putin believes he can use Russia's manpower advantage to secure the win in the Dnipro region. And that advantage certainly exists. Russia has 1.32 million soldiers in its active military, compared to Ukraine's 900,000. Russia also has 800,000 more reserves to call upon, along with 150,000 more paramilitary. However, it's here that Ukraine's kill zone strategy comes into full focus. Ukraine is limited in its ability to protect the tree lines and sheltered settlements where Russia is able to press its numerical advantage to take territory, so it doesn't. Instead, Ukraine sets up kill zones just outside of these covered areas to prepare for future Russian pushes. As soon as Russian soldiers leave the relative safety of the sheltered areas, they're hit hard. Artillery and drone fire rain down and the Russian assaults are pushed back to the sheltered regions. Therein lies the secret to Ukraine's kill zone. Rather than losing thousands of soldiers in direct confrontations with Russia, Ukraine is instead allowing Russia to take small portions of territory. From there, Ukraine baits the Russian soldiers out by defending the territory they really want. The Russian soldiers under Putin's orders have to continue their assaults, so they push further. And in those renewed pushes that take them out of shelter, they become vulnerable to Ukraine's counterattacks. It's a strategy that sees Ukraine sacrifice a little to cause major damage to Russia's military, and it's a strategy that's aided by a somewhat happy accident. As the lowdown notes, a large reason why Ukraine's kill zones are working so well is that Ukraine hasn't built an extensive trench network in the regions that Putin's forces are targeting. That lack of trenches hurts Russia. Its infantry can't hunker down in trenches that aren't there, leaving them open to Ukraine's drone and artillery fire. Any attack becomes a risky endeavor. And given that these trenchless patches of land are those Ukraine has used to create its kill zones, Russia can't build the trenches itself. Its troops would be obliterated if they did. There are echoes of the no man's land, created as part of the trench warfare tactics seen during World War I. Putin would have been happy with that. His ideal version of the Ukraine war would see Ukraine build trenches on one side, with Russia having trenches on the other. Both would launch sporadic assaults across no man's land, allowing Russia's manpower advantage to come to the fore. Ukraine was too smart to let that happen. It created kill zones instead. Putin would have hoped to turn into no man's land, with his antiquated trench warfare tactics has instead evolved into Ukraine's kill zones. Ukraine is covering for its manpower shortage with an abundance of drones, says the lowdown, which patrol the kill zone. Those drones are supported by artillery barrages, which are supported by shells from the Czech Artillery Initiative. This collaborative effort, which sees Ukraine's allies donate money to the initiative so it can build shells to send to Ukraine, anticipates delivering around 400,000 more shells to the front line by the end of 2025, to add to the hundreds of thousands it's already sent. Add to all of that the razor wire and anti-tank ditches Ukraine has built into its kill zone. Those measures serve several purposes. Obviously, they slow down Russia's assaults as they're happening. Infantry has to navigate the razor wire, and both tanks and armored vehicles have to negotiate their way through the ditches. However, the razor wire and ditches also serve as an early warning system for Ukraine, along with being one of the key ways Ukraine funnels Russia's troops into its kill zones. The slowdown these measures cause enables Ukraine to monitor Russia's troop movement. Inevitably, those Russian troops divert away from the razor wire and anti-tank ditches, which is precisely what Ukraine wants, and those diversions send the Russians right into the sights of the drones and artillery Ukraine prepares. It's a brilliant strategy, and it's one that's causing sheer panic among Putin's forces. As the lowdown notes, Ukraine's clever kill zone strategy forces every Russian soldier who survives a Ukrainian counter to go running in the hope of finding a trench or ditch that could save their lives. Often that cover isn't found. The Russian soldier dies to a drone or an explosion. In other cases, we see Russia relying on motorcycles to get past kill zones. The theory is solid enough. Motorcycles are small enough to fly under the radar as well as fast enough to evade drones, but they still get slowed down by anti-tank ditches. Then they're either cut down by Ukraine's forces or forced into acts of desperation, such as the one seen around the time that Ukraine unleashed its genius kill zone strategy in Belgorod. On that day, a Ukrainian drone tracked a Russian motorcycle soldier racing as fast as he could across one of the kill zones Ukraine created. The soldier got lucky. No mines exploded under his bike, and Ukraine couldn't hit the fast-moving soldier with its artillery. The soldier even managed to avoid drones as he hurtled towards his target. The luck didn't hold. The soldier eventually came across an anti-tank ditch. Measuring 20 feet across and 20 feet deep, the ditch was the obstacle that ultimately spelled his demise. The motorcyclist had two options: slow down and make himself a target for Ukraine's kill zone drones, or attempt to jump over the ditch. The soldier went with the latter option, but he failed to leap the ditch. By now you're seeing just how effective Ukraine's kill zones are. Ukraine has employed them all across the front line, which is why we're seeing Russia's summer offensive stall out on Belgorod, Pokrovsk, and every other region Putin targets. So we come to an obvious question: why does Putin keep falling for the same trick over and over again? The answer is that he doesn't really have a choice. Back in November 2024, Foreign Policy published an article noting that Putin's only tactic is throwing human waves at Ukraine. That strategy is born from the manpower advantage we mentioned earlier. Putin believes that these human waves will be enough to gradually break down Ukraine's defenses as he creates a terrifying meat grinder on the battlefield. It's the precise tactic we see in Belgorod, and it's one that Ukraine figured out very early into the war. It's also a tactic that is causing massive Russian losses. On April 30th, the Kyiv Independent reported that Russia had lost 951,960 of its soldiers to death, injury, or capture between February 2022 and the date of the article's publication. The outlet also noted that Russia was losing around 1,100 soldiers daily, over 10,700 Russian tanks, more than 22,000 of Russia's armored vehicles, and 46,611 other vehicles and fuel tanks have also been lost. These catastrophic loss rates are indicative of a Russian leader who has no plan B. All he can do is send soldier after soldier into the meat grinder, many of them falling victim to Ukraine's kill zones, because his only tactic is attritional. Putin believes he can sacrifice so many of his people because Ukraine will eventually run out of ammunition. That doesn't seem to be happening anytime soon. So Putin keeps on falling for the kill zone trick. Beyond Putin's belief in the effectiveness of his attritional strategy, Russia's failure to adapt to Ukraine's kill zones is a problem that runs through its military. As the European Council on Foreign Relations, or ECFR, reports, Putin is at least somewhat aware that the tactics he's using in Ukraine are antiquated. He has to be, otherwise he wouldn't have attempted so many reforms of Russia's military during his time as the country's president. All of those reforms have failed. Before he ever invaded Ukraine, Putin had attempted to deal with Russia's faulty equipment issues, says ECFR. He'd created new military doctrines, attempted to improve the poor training methods Russia employed. Putin tried to do all of this while dealing with the systemic issues within a Russian military where corruption ran rampant and adherence to outdated tactics was the norm. Putin spent big on his attempted reforms. Between coming to power in 2000 and 2021, the year before the Ukraine invasion, Putin tripled Russia's military budget. It rose from $22.84 billion annually to $65.91 billion, with those 21 years of gradually increasing spending amounting to $1.1 trillion dedicated to reforming Russia's military. None of it worked. It's difficult to determine precisely why Putin's reforms failed. Too much of a focus on measurable factors such as troop and equipment numbers may have played a role. That over-focus on such areas may have prevented Russia's defense industry from innovating and could have distracted it from figuring out how to combine its army, air force, and navy, so those three core components could launch joint assaults against Ukraine. Ultimately, the reasons for the failure of Putin's reforms don't matter. What matters is that we're seeing the results in Ukraine. Russia's forces keep falling into Ukraine's kill zones because they have no option but to do so. It's almost a chicken and egg situation. Putin relies on Russia's manpower and equipment advantage to make gains in Ukraine because his attempted reforms were too heavily focused on those very advantages. You can't reform by keeping what was already in place. That's what Putin attempted to do, and Russia's offensives have devolved into the human wave assaults that we see today as a result. The assaults Ukraine is so easily crushing during Russia's faltering summer offensive. The Belgorod incident we've reported here is just a microcosm of what's going on across the Ukraine war's entire front line. All that's left for Putin is to keep following the same tactic because he's run out of ideas. As the Kyiv Post reported on May 21st, Russia is currently amassing troops near the Kharkiv region for what will likely be renewed rounds of human wave assaults that go into the summer. Russia has also been testing Ukraine's defenses in Sumy and Zaporizhia during the last few months, according to RUSI. Those assaults are either intended to pull Ukrainian troops away from Donetsk or prevent Ukraine's Belgorod raid. Russia is also deploying fiber-optic drones across the front lines. These drones, which can fly for between 9 and 18 miles, are immune to jamming, though Ukraine says that it still has ways to counter them. Putin is amassing forces for a new offensive. His goal is clearly to take more Ukrainian land he can use as leverage in future peace talks. However, Putin will soon discover that this goal is unachievable because his looming summer offensive is doomed to failure. That's according to Dmytro Zhmylo, who's the executive director of the Ukrainian Security and Cooperation Center. Speaking to The Telegraph, he says, "For now, any offensive by Russia on the front line is impossible. Russia does not have any big military victories on the front line, so they want to give the impression that there are huge movements and advantages. That's what Russia's summer offensive will be reduced to. Putin will try to pull the wool over the eyes of the rest of the world by constantly moving his troops around while launching human wave assaults against Ukraine. But the reality on the ground is that thousands of Russia's soldiers